What is interesting to you? What is passionate for you? What do you like about it? What sort of movie you forward in what you are doing today?
Africana studies, and the study of people of African descent is a study of humanity. You know, we all know humanity began in Africa, and so a lot of times people will, to that point, say, "Well, that's just their history." But Africana studies and African history is the history of humanity. My name is Dr. Eva Bohler. I'm an assistant professor at California State Long Beach. I'm in Long Beach, California, in the Department of Africana Studies. I just finished my first full year. It was a wonderful experience. I'm so grateful to be there. Some really great colleagues. I finished my PhD at Temple University in the Department of Africana Studies in December of 2021. And then, so kind of had like a long academic journey. I originally got my master's at Temple in 2006 when the department was called African American Studies. Then subsequently got a master's in English from Arcadia University in Glenside, PA. Worked in social services for about 15 and a half years. So I was working and going to school at the same time. So it took me a while to get where I'm at, but I finally arrived, and I'm grateful to be at this point in my journey.
That's interesting. That is fantastic. All right, so we're talking about history, we're talking about story today. So I think we'll first of all take a step backward to know you a bit. Of course, that is how we set up this podcast. We really are passionate about our background, so at least we know the individual who is talking. Then we can know also what they're doing. So tell me a bit about your background, your adolescent years. Where do you remember about your childhood growing up?
So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. So just growing up in Detroit, primarily my family is from the American South. So just having that Midwest upbringing, but then also having that Southern influence. And a lot of times in the American South, the family is central. So having this extended family of cousins and older cousins who are like aunts and uncles kind of just really helped frame my background. And then also just really having this value of, and I think it really kind of played a role into my studies, really valuing who I am or who we are as African descended people. So a lot of that culture played a role. A lot of just that the Southern culture really values Blackness, being proud of being who you are. And so I just kind of remember anecdotally as a child wanting Barbie dolls. It's funny, the new Barbie movie's out, but wanting Barbie dolls, and my parents always made sure that I had black Barbie. Any doll that I had, they tried to make sure I had a black doll. So just kind of really seeing that image of Blackness being beautiful. And so it's kind of, I think just kind of as I look back on that, it kind of really framed just kind of who I kind of became as a studier of African American history and Africana studies.
Thank you so much for that. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Was there anything that sort of point you towards becoming an academia, be interested in story? So I'm trying to understand if there is anything that would have pointed you to that direction, or is it a choice that you make out of a research or something like that?
So I think one thing, as I kind of look back on my journey, I think my undergraduate time, so I got a undergraduate degree at Michigan State University. And so during that time, I originally wanted to be a lawyer. So it's funny, like being an academic, studying Africana studies, at that point really wasn't on my radar. I did take quite a few courses in undergrad, African American history, African American vernacular English, which I took a course with Dr. Geneva Smitherman. And I think really at that point, it kind of sparked more of my interest. But I still was on this idea of wanting to be a lawyer. But when I took the law school admission test, I didn't do well enough to do that. So I kind of had to redirect my life. And so just kind of thinking of a plan, I applied for the master's in African American studies at Temple and got in. And so I kind of think that time at Michigan State, taking a few of those classes kind of started that. But then just having to kind of redirect what I wanted to do kind of really solidified that one thing that I thought I was supposed to do wasn't really the plan for my life. And so it just kind of really sparked this idea of what to do next and becoming an Africologist and getting this African American Studies master's. And it's funny because I really hadn't at that point, after I got my master's, thought of getting a PhD. But I think just kind of what I've learned in those years prior to starting my PhD kind of really set the tone for where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, of course, this is what you do now. This is where you are now. You journey, you move. We can see your trajectory, where you're coming from. But tell me a bit about this. What do you like about African studies? What is interesting to you? What is passionate for you? What do you like about it? What sort of moving you forward in what you're doing today?
There's so much that I can say that I like about it, but I think just as an African descendant people, just really having an African descendant person, just really having that grounding in the value of African and by extension African American studies, African Caribbean studies, just the value of African people, the value of the history, the culture, the literature. I think just really just having that value, everything related to African descendant people. And just I think, and I just kind of will kind of talk about this too, along with my own personal journey of kind of finding out a little bit more about my African ancestry. Been doing a lot of genealogical research, DNA testing. And so I think coupled with that, I've just gained this greater appreciation of what it means to be a person of African descent. And so I think just kind of looking at where I'm at right now, I really feel at home in Africana studies, because it's kind of really helped me to appreciate who I am as a person of African descent. So it's just so much that I can say that I like about it, and just really feel at home in this space.
And I'm thinking that there are some people out there who do not understand what is the importance. Why should we care about African studies? And okay, now let's say we are concentrating on African diaspora, because that is the target in this podcast. They might be in Canada, they might be in US, they might be in UK, they might be in other part of the European country, or maybe in China. It doesn't matter. As long as we are African descent, we are the target of this conversation. Why should they care about what you are doing? Why should they care about African study? Why should they study their history?
I think it's simply Africana studies, and the study of people of African descent is a study of humanity. You know, we all know humanity began in Africa. And so a lot of times people will, to that point say, well, that's just their history, but Africana studies and African history is the history of humanity. If you think about the contributions of people of African descent to the totality of humanity, you can't isolate the history of Africana people and say that it's just their or our history. It belongs to everyone, because Africana people have played such an important role. And I think really, in order to understand humanity, you have to look at the history of Africa and Africana people.
All right, thank you so much for that.